I got super lost in Aachen, like on my first day. I was like, oh, let me just explore the city. And I kept seeing the sign for Einbahnstraße, and I kept thinking that has to be such a main street if I keep seeing this sign. And I kept just following the signs each direction.
Going
It kept
around.
saying Einbahnstraße, and I'm like, where is this like big street? It has to be like the main street in the city.
It's the Germany Experience, the podcast about life in Germany as seen through the eyes of outsiders. I'm your host, Sean. Visit the website, thegermanyexperience.de, for more information about the episodes, about the podcast, or get in touch with me at info@thegermanyexperience.de. My guest this week is from the US and is working as a PhD student here in Germany, and we'll hear her story about learning German, making friends, and what life is like here for a PhD student in a bit. But there is a lot of stuff happening, so I want to tell you about some of that first. And we have to start with THREGEPADFO. As I'm sure you know by now, it's the charity challenge that Nicole of the Expat Cast and I do over the Advent time in Germany. And we try to see who can raise the most money for charity. And this year's charity is Kinderlachen, which focuses on helping children out who are in need in Germany. You can donate by going to thegermanyexperience.de/charity. All the instructions are there. Follow the link and you can donate. Now, over on Instagram, every year this charity challenge involves a bit of back and forth between Nicole and I. And usually there's some really bad trash talk from Nicole. And I don't mean bad as in like tough and mean. I mean like she's really bad at trash talk. So it is always fun to watch her try. But we also challenge each other to various tasks. And last week, I challenged Nicole to rewrite a Christmas song to be about THREGEPADFO. And did she deliver? It was amazing to listen to. It was on last week's episode of the Expat Cast. Go and take a listen to it, where Nicole sings her Christmas song. And then she challenged me back, of course. So Nicole wants me to rewrite a classic Christmas poem. And I thought, what is more classic than the A Visit from St. Nicholas poem by Clement Mark Moore? So here is my poem, Nicole, in an answer to your challenge. I'm going to get music going. You need some music. Like, you need some background music for a poem like this, okay? Okay, so here goes. Here goes. 'Twas the night before THREGEPADFO, when in two corners of Germany, two podcasters were prepping for an all-out rivalry. Their cause was noble, to support the children by raising money for a charity called Kinderlachen. You see, not all children can be nestled snug in their beds, with visions of sugar plums dancing in their heads. And that's why Nicole and Sean have drawn battle lines to help the children who are facing difficult times. Then out on the podcast feeds arose such a clatter, an unearthly sound, whatever was the matter. To my podcast player I flew like a flash. It was just Nicole singing and talking some trash. See, that's just her festive spirit. She likes to diss, and her singing sounds a little like an apocalypse. Now Nicole's challenged me to write a short verse, which I'll do without sounding like I'm needing a hearse. I hope that this little poem suffices to convince you to help little kids in crisis. You can be some child's secret Santa Claus if you spare even just a little bit and donate to my cause. Any difference we make could be a difference that lasts. And also, it'll help me beat the Expat Cast. Thank you for your kindness over this special event. Happy holidays to all, and to all, a good Advent. So there you go, Nicole. There is your poem. I built in some trash talk into it. There's trash talk in my poem. That is how you trash talk. If that convinced you to donate, go to thegermanyexperience.de/charity and donate. And if it didn't convince you to donate, I don't know what I can do. There is literally no more I can do. And by the way, as of right now, I am winning. I've raised 150 euros so far, and Nicole is on 130, so it is close. And thank you to all listeners who've donated so far. It means so much to me. All right, looking ahead to next week's episode, I will be having a very special guest on the show to take a look back at 2021. We'll be discussing our highs and lows of the year, but I also want yours. Send me your highs and lows of 2021 to info@thegermanyexperience.de, and I would love to read them out next week. Or if you'd like to record a voice message, even better, go to thegermanyexperience.de, take a look at the bottom right of the screen, find the little mic icon, and then follow the instructions to leave me a voice message that I can play on the show next week. I'm really looking forward to hearing your highs and lows of 2021. Now, one last thing before I get to the guest this week. I find that if you want to get to know Germany better, or any country basically, you need to take a closer look at its culture. And a big part of any culture is its music. And so, I've started a new podcast that will be available only on Spotify called 5 German Songs. In every episode, I will play 5 songs that define a certain aspect of Germany, along with explanations and deeper insights into the music and the culture, and even sometimes the history. The first episode, for example, features 5 all-time classic German songs, and the second episode takes a look at 5 of the biggest German hits in 2021. I'm very excited for it. It starts on the 3rd of January, so click the link in the show notes and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify. In the meantime, one small thing to note, the podcast will be better if you have a Spotify premium membership, because then you'll hear the full songs. Otherwise, you'll just hear 30-second snippets of the songs. But it's my new podcast, 5 German Songs. Go and find it on Spotify. And now, finally, we get to my guest this week, Jeanette. She is originally from Florida in the US, and she got interested in the German language while she was in college. She decided to come to Germany for an internship and ended up getting a position at the Rheinisch-Westfälische Technische Hochschule Aachen University. It was a 10-week stint, and then she decided to apply for a master's program here in Germany as well. And then, in 2018, she started a PhD, and she's still here. We discuss her path to learning German, her biggest tip to make speaking German easier, working as a PhD student, and much more. Here is Jeanette. So we're going to get to your to the PhD. We're going to talk a little bit later on about what that's like. Just tell me what the PhD is in.
Yeah, it's in textile engineering.
Okay.
So it is not fashion design. That's what a lot of people think.
Yeah.
It's actually here at this university. It falls into the mechanical engineering department.
Okay.
And so my bachelor's, I studied actually material science and engineering. So a little bit of a different background, I guess. But I think the textile engineering kind of originated in weaving machines and knitting machines and spinning machines. So really a lot more than machinery. Like I said, I do textile engineering where I focus on like filament production. So making nylon yarn, polyester yarn, that kind of stuff. And it's not something that most people think about, but it's actually, everything we wear has polyester. It's super, super relevant. Germany is actually one of the like world leaders for technical textiles. If you think about car interiors and carpeting and all of the masks, that's also like textile. A lot of people think about that filtration. So I thought that was something, I thought Germany had a lot more possibilities for textiles. Yeah,
it's not something I've ever thought of before, but you're 100% correct. Like the moment you said like in the automotive industry with all the things that, like, of course, it makes sense.
And like all of those things have so many requirements, like airplanes too. They have absurd like fire resistant requirements. Everything in a hospital or in schools too. I think that started because I was actually really interested in like sports material. So I think it was when like Michael Phelps was winning, I think in the Beijing Olympics. That's when they were still using these like full body super suits. Yeah. And they were actually like more hydrodynamic than skin, I think it was. And that's when like I started like looking at like, what are these materials made of? That was where like the material science came in. Then Under Armour so I went to the University of Baltimore. Under Armour is based there. I thought that was really cool. So that's it, kind of went from like sports clothing to just general textiles. And now, polymer stuff.
That is so interesting because I was about to ask you how you ended up in textiles, because it's not something that kids think about when they're growing up and everything. But that is very interesting. So you're doing your PhD in that, and like I said, we'll get into that in the future. But so you said you started playing around with the German language when you were younger. So did you already have a basis for German when you came over here?
Well, younger, I would say, is still after my freshman year of college. So
okay.
I would call that, I mean, it's not old, but it's definitely not like little kid.
Yeah, you're not a kid.
No, that was legit. Yeah, after my freshman year of college was like the first time I learned like a legitimate German word besides like, I don't know, Gesundheit or like the words that like people just hear of. No, that was the first time. I had never even known anybody who spoke German before that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm from Florida. That's most people speak Spanish.
Right.
Some people maybe speak French, but German isn't exactly like a common language in Florida.
Okay. So
No.
how was your journey learning German then? Was it a difficult thing for you? But maybe before you answer that, your studies that you did here, was that in German, or were you able to do that in English?
So when I applied, I thought it was all in English. And then when I was here, I realized it was actually half-half.
Surprise!
Yeah. Yeah, so it's half-half, but the way it worked, it was, I think, a 3-semester program. And the first semester was all English, and the second semester was then starting to introduce more German classes.
Okay.
So like they gave you time, and I think the requirement was to have B1, I think.
Okay.
So
which is quite advanced.
It was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, the lectures were in German. We were allowed to write like the exams in English, but still the exam questions were in German. We were allowed to have a dictionary. So the textile engineering thing is also something I only learned here. So you end up learning a lot of technical words only in German. And so my sentences were like, I don't know, the Fischleich Einheit is used to make the drawing to increase the Festigkeit of the filament so that we can have a better Webverfahren. And it was like the worst like mix of both. And the professor still gave me like full points for all those things. But there's just so many things that I only learned here in like the technical words. But I have to say this is the first language that I learned like from scratch. So I spoke a little bit of Spanish when I was growing up. And I think then all throughout school, I always took Spanish because that's what was offered at our schools. Yeah. And that was always kind of like a fair disadvantage. We actually had at our school Spanish for Spanish speakers. Mm-hmm. And that was basic for the people who have the pronunciation and have the basic vocabulary, but don't use all of the complicated grammar. And I think that's why learning German was kind of like a shock. I was like, oh yeah, like Spanish isn't so hard. It can't be that hard to learn a new language. But starting from scratch is like a totally different story. Yeah, and where like the pronunciation isn't something you had from childhood. So it was very hard. But when I came for the internship, we had, I think, 8 hours a week of a A1 class. And that was like so intense. I remember like even the word like Euro, like the teacher was saying like, we were learning numbers and she would say like, €7, €10. And we were like, what is this word that you're saying? And she's like, oh, euros. And we're like, okay. And like such little things. Yeah. So I think I officially finished A1 then, but it was super, super hard. I honestly think, so the program I did in summer was like 50 American or US and Canadian students. And so we all kind of like had each other as a group, and we each also had a German buddy. And I think what helped a lot was going out. Because when we drink, like, everyone gets a little bit more comfortable when you drink a little, and then that's when like it would flow. And that's when we would all like practice our German a lot more, and the Germans would talk to us more in German. But yeah, after A1, like you still have nothing. You have like the very, very basics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not that helpful. A1 is not that helpful.
Yeah. And then so after that program is when I went back to university in the US and got placed into the basic intro level German. I was like, okay. So I realized that A1 didn't really help me that much. And so I took another basic level. What was also really funny there, we were reading János, Obi Schönes Panama, I think is the book. Yeah. It's like a children's book. Yeah. And I remember one day we had a fire alarm go off in our building. And when we were like reading this story. And so we all went outside, we had the lawn, like a lot of these American universities have. And this is the same building that had like all the philosophy classes and like these very like humanities classes. And they're all sitting in circles talking about whatever philosophy stuff. And then we're sitting there in a circle, like college students doing like reading time. And our professor, our like German professor, sitting there with the book and like, oh, the Tiga sagte something. And I'm just like, this is what we're paying for university. But like, I couldn't even understand that book. So yeah, it took like a long time. And I think even like anything I learned there was still, like not pitiful, but I came back then for the master's and realized, okay, basically don't know anything. Yeah. There was like the tiniest sentences. Aachen itself is like really hard to pronounce. And when I came for the first time, I was telling the guy at the train station, like Aachen. And no idea. I showed him the ticket. He's like, Aachen. And I was like, yeah, that's what I said. That's really bad. Another really bad story was I remember I knew the word for Straße, so
Okay.
the street.
Okay.
And these European cities are all in circles, like they have these big rings.
Yeah.
And I remember I got super lost in Aachen, like on my first day. I was also jet lagged and like exhausted, but I was like, oh, let me just explore the city. And I kept seeing the sign for Einbahnstraße, and I kept thinking that has to be such a main street if I keep seeing this sign. And I kept just following the signs each direction. I kept saying Einbahnstraße, and I'm like, where is this like big street? It has to be like the main street in the city. And I don't even think I realized it that day. I realized like a long time later when I learned what Einbahnstraße meant. It means a one-way street. And so I was literally just following these signs that said one-way street, thinking I was going to get to like the main street in like 3 minutes. I had no idea how long I walked around like that, but like, yeah.
That's great. I love that
funny story now, but I was like so ready and so done on that day.
Yeah. It's always funny to look back on these things. And what you were saying about not being able to say where you're going, I had exactly that when in the beginning, we lived in a street called Albertistraße. I still actually can't say it correctly because the Germans need to hear that R in the middle of it. So it's Albertistraße.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were just incapable of saying that R sound. So it would always come out like Albertistraße or Albertistraße or whatever. And the taxi drivers just never understood us. We were like, sometimes, how are we going to get home? And then we had to find like landmarks nearby. We could always tell the taxi drivers, like, go to that place and then we'll just walk to where we are.
Yeah. The same thing with like bus stops here. There's this one bus stop, it's called THREGEPADFO.
Oh my God.
I can't even say it right, I think now. And anytime someone be like, oh, where do you need to get off? I'd be like, the stop near the whatever bar. And they'd be like, oh yeah, THREGEPADFO. And I'm like,
that's the one.
Yeah.
There are these words and place
bad.
names that you just have to kind of avoid saying because no one's going to understand it. So how was it then with the learning process? You must have pushed through. I guess your German's at a good level now, right?
Yeah, sorry, it's taken me a long time to get to the part where the breakthrough happens.
That's also reflective of how this works, people.
Yeah, it did take a very long time. And there's a lot of funny things that happened on the way. But yeah, so then when I came out for the master's, we had like more like German intensive classes. Like I mentioned, we had up to B1, but it really only got better when I started like speaking a lot more, and that's what everybody says, and it's true. So anyone, listening, do that. That's like the only, like I tell everybody I meet here, you just have to practice. So I think it really got better when I met my boyfriend, because there we spoke a lot. We actually, we talk about this later, but we met through like an international club, I guess, like for interns coming to Aachen. Yeah.
So you literally met a German at a Verein.
Yeah. That's true. That's so typical.
Well, this is what I've given this advice 100 times on this podcast. Is, you know what? If you want to make friends or meet people, go to a Verein. There you go.
And the thing is, I guess, because this is like a Verein for international people, is why I felt like I would be welcomed here, because there's not the stress to be like an avid tennis player or I don't know, a crazy into chess or something like that.
Or like a fondness for potatoes. They literally have a Verein for everything.
So it was like, they offered coffee. I went in, there was actually no coffee, but then they were like, you want to come to our meeting today? So that's why I met him. But that's why I knew like, okay, the people here, like I obviously just went to make friends. And I was like, okay, the people here would be open to speaking English with me and open to getting to know someone who wasn't German, which is why I think that was like a good step. But then with him, that's when I started speaking a lot more German. Actually, at the beginning, I remember him helping me with my like homework, like very simple little assignments and stuff like that. But we actually at the very beginning did a very, very strict 1 day English, 1 day German.
Okay.
But one time, like relatively early when we were dating already, I told him once, "Du bist wertlos." And I was thinking of the MasterCard commercials where they say like everything is priceless. Right. And I told him he was wertlos, which means that he's worthless. And he was like, what? And so there's like things that like happen like that. But like speaking with someone like that you're comfortable with, like it doesn't have to be a boyfriend or girlfriend, but like someone that you're comfortable with and you know that they'll like be patient with it. That's where it got much, much, much better. Yeah. It was very hard though at the beginning. But the thing is that because we met in both languages, like I think that's also a problem for a lot of people. They get to know, maybe like I think you said also like, German people, but you met in English and then it just sticks. Like they're a totally different person when it's in German. So we kind of met each other in both languages and it still sticks. So like I don't feel weird speaking one language with him or with the other. But that was definitely like one like real big jump. And then the other one was when I did my master's thesis at a company here in Aachen, and there I only spoke German at the company. And that was like one more like big leap. And I think after that leap, maybe it's got a little better, but it's just doing it every day and not worrying about sounding stupid.
And it's a big thing you say that there was a big leap in your German because you were forced to speak German, but that comes with a lot of stress and strain as well. I know I had the same thing in my career. Like when you in that position where it's just German around you, and it's pretty stressful at first.
Yeah. I think that I was also lucky. The woman I worked with mostly like one-on-one, I think she was from Iran. She also spoke German though, but every once in a while we would like say single words, or she would also have trouble explaining something in German.
Right.
So I think that made it a little bit easier having somebody else who's also kind of in that situation. But yeah, I honestly am surprised that I like went into it like that, because when I asked about the application or about the position, I asked in English. And then at some point when I got to like the next, not application or an interview, but the next guy, like one step higher on the totem pole, then it was just German. And it stuck. But I was like, I don't know. I guess I surprised myself with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since then, so now at work, I speak German. That was like the first time in my life where I spoke 8 hours a day another language, and not my mother or a language I learned when I was little. It's this new like super foreign language. And yeah, whenever we just like drink coffee or just hung around or at lunch, because we would always go to the cafeteria together, I just like wanted to like shut down and not talk about what I did on the weekend, or I don't know, whatever soccer game, because I also don't care about soccer, let's say.
Yeah.
And I would just not talk to anyone. I think that kind of came off as rude, or I don't know, people just thought like she's like, I'm generally introverted, but then even more extreme because I like gave no input to the talks, just because I'd rather like space out in my 30-minute lunch or hour lunch than work. Like I don't think that people realize how much work you put in.
They don't, and
all day long.
Yeah, and the Germans around you don't realize. I think a lot of them know what it's like to speak English or another. A lot of them do speak another language. But when you're in it like that, especially when you're in the beginning phases of making that leap, you're still struggling. It's a lot of effort, and they don't realize. They're just like seeing you as this person that's there. Okay, she can speak German, she understands. And then at lunchtime, when you're completely withdrawn, they're like, well, this is a strange person or whatever. But it's not. It's like they don't realize how much this takes out of you, this learning process.
Yeah, it's not just like passive listening. It's so much work. Yeah. So I think that was hard, and now it's better, but that's super hard at the beginning.
Yeah. And you're also not just learning the language, but you're also focusing on work. Like there's work stuff going on. So it's almost like you've got double the drain on your mental energy at these things. So. Yeah,
like they always like praise and they're like, wow, that's like you can speak such good, and like it's not passive, it's not it is true. I'm like, thank you, like I always say thank you, but it's different when you have one meeting in English a day rather than 8. I don't know.
So did you have any tricks that you used when you were learning German? And
so I think I don't even know how long after it was. Like, I don't remember if it was after a year that I started like really speaking more. But I learned that in German, you can make this like diminutive of things by adding like chen at the end, like Häuschen, Kätzchen, Tischchen.
Everything basically.
Everything. Or
Every
line.
noun.
That's the other one. Boyschlein is the other one, but I didn't learn that one until a lot later. Händchen, Füßchen. All these kinds of words, because it's always das. It's always the neutral. And I still have like a terrible job of picking the right gender of the words. My one trick, actually, I didn't say this before, my one trick is also to pluralize it all. Just stick with D.
Yes.
That's also pretty good. If it has to work with the sentence.
Yeah.
But that works pretty well. The other one was to always make things like the cute small version. So instead of saying like, I don't know, my feet are cold, I'd be like, my little feet, or like my footsies are cold. And I think most of the time my boyfriend found that very cute. And generally people would be like, oh, cute, huh, Zeus? But every once in a while it would then be like, it got so automated in a way so that like I I don't know if I used it at work, but I definitely almost did. Or like I used in some other settings, I would accidentally say like in some sort of like official meeting, I don't know, Husien instead of saying Huse. And it didn't get me in trouble, but I don't think it helped to make me seem more official, more professional.
Yeah,
And it's a good trick. It's just something that you got to grow out of at some point too.
yeah, and I think that's part of the whole thing with when you're a German learner. I mean, that in that case, it would be like you said, people maybe find it cute, but people are probably not going to take you seriously if you're using the Shin form of nouns all the time. And that's also a common problem that people have when they're learning German, is being taken seriously because you can't express yourself like you want to express yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it happens at work. I mean, we're in like a technical thing. And I mean, I studied for 4 years before this, and I have like a good background in some stuff. And I just like couldn't explain what it is that I was trying to say, or I wouldn't catch a question if someone else is asking, where I'd answer it wrong because I understood it differently. And it's really annoying because I'm like, I am intelligent. I know maybe not as much as you guys do, but I do also have some sort of background information. I just can't convey it correctly, which is like super hard. And I think, I don't know how that works. Like now I think it's fine, but it is very hard, I think, to be taken seriously in some sort of, in another language. It's just everything is, or you just pronounce something like cute and everyone's like, instead of focusing on the content, they just focus on like, oh, that sounded so Zeus. I'm like, no, but like, listen to my answer.
Yeah, it's frustrating. So I guess a big part of the adjustment process is learning German. But where are you at now with your happiness levels, let's put it that way, in Germany? Are you feeling pretty comfortable and satisfied?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I started just last year telling my family, like, I think I'll stay here. I think I had decided that like a little while earlier. I don't know. I didn't want to like say it because I wasn't sure. But I can see myself staying here for like the rest of my life. I think one of the biggest things was my boyfriend, because with him came like all of my friends also, because the people I'm friends with now are still the people that I met from this group, but also like his family and having somewhere to go on Christmas and on Easter and these kinds of things, or even on vacation. Like we do like a family vacation, like a week, usually once a year kind of thing. And I think that really like made a little more okay for me.
It makes it a bit more like home, I guess, like feels a little bit homey in a way.
Yeah. Like before I met him, I was like legitimate, like hating it. Literally the week before I met, I was like, this is a terrible decision. I should go back.
So let me just understand the timeline. How long have you been in Germany now?
Almost 5.5 years.
So 5.5 years, you're feeling comfortable. At that point where you were hating it and saying you wanted to potentially leave a bad decision, how long was that?
That was like 4 months after I came. So it wasn't that.
So it's really
long.
In the beginning. Yeah. So enough for the honeymoon phase to be past.
I can't remember like the first weeks, but I like at that point I was so frustrated that no one was helping me finding things. Like, like I always thought like, university, everyone's super open. But they were also, everyone who goes to university goes with their friends and their people from high school, and they move in with their friends from high school. In the US, also that happens. But when I went to college, I didn't know one person like at all in the whole state, in the whole like 3-hour radius. And it was fine. And I like immediately became best friends with my roommate. And here, when I came, I moved into a shared apartment with two other people. And I don't know. You never lived in like a shared apartment here, right? Because you had like a family.
I haven't, yeah.
It's so different. It's like literally you just live together. You're not friends. You just live together. There's these other ones that they have like, there's like some sort of Wiki, like
Wiki mit Zweck.
Yeah,
Zweck Wiki.
That's something else.
Yeah.
But this was just because I needed a room for 6 months, and it was fine. We like said hi and like saw each other, but like never did anything.
And that's kind of weird as well. Like that must feel so strange.
Yeah. And I like, they were also like moving out, and like, I don't know, it was like always a lot of people rotating, but I found it like super hard to get to know them. And then, so I used to do ballet when I was little, and then smart me was like, oh, I guess I'll start doing ballet. There I'll meet people. That is like one of the worst places to meet people, probably, because that's one of those things that you don't talk while you're doing it. It's like there's almost, there's other hobbies and other sports that you don't really talk while doing it. I don't know what I thought. Like after ballet, we're going to go get a beer together or something.
Yes.
Like,
but that's what a lot of But that's what a lot of people do think when they come to Germany. You think that you're going to go to drinks after these kinds of things. Another guest on the podcast,
Oh,
Beth.
yeah.
Yeah, Beth joined a volleyball club, for example, and she was like, obviously afterwards we're going to go for drinks. No, the Germans don't. I mean, generally it's a gross exaggeration, but generally they're not just going to say, let's go for a beer afterwards. They go back to their families or their whatever they're going back to.
Yeah, so that ballet was, I mean, I still do it now and I like it, but it's not like I didn't make friends there that I like see now on the weekends. So yeah, I think that time before I met this like international group was getting like, I don't know, it was getting really bad. And then like my birthday was coming up and I was like, I'm gonna spend my birthday alone. I don't know anybody. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And that's when I was like, yeah, sure, I'll have coffee and sure, I'll come to this club meeting, although I don't know these people. And I figured like, what's the worst that can happen? It's not a big city, but there'll be other people here if it's awkward and if they're weird. Ended up okay. But I thought that was very weird. Like when I actively asked somebody for help for something, like they were super nice and helpful, but like if I'm clearly obviously confused, standing in front of a building looking for something, nobody is just like, can I help you? Do you need something? Like this like proactiveness just doesn't happen. And that's so frustrating.
Yeah. So then you made new friends at starting with this club and then things progressively got better to the point where you thought, hey, it's worth sticking around.
Yeah, until after my master's, the whole time I was thinking, yeah, after the master's, we'll see. Then I finished the master's, was still dating my boyfriend, and then thinking, I kind of need to do something, work somewhere. So he was still studying. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I guess I can just work at this institute that I'm at now. You know, how hard can it be? They had a position open, something about actuators. I applied. I told them in my email, I was like, I have no idea I don't know anything about this. I'm willing to learn. I don't know though. I wrote my whole application in German, this kind of stuff. And then we had like a pre-meeting. They kind of like prep you for the interview so that you know what to talk about. And then in that pre-meeting was when I first found out that it's actually a PhD position. I'm like, okay. I was like, oh, okay. So you could do a PhD. And the guy was like, well, no, like it's expected. He's like, right. You don't have to, but that's the default is to do the PhD. And so like most people apply for this position knowing that they want to have a PhD in 5 years. And for me, it was kind of like, oh, I guess I'll do it, kind of like fell into it. I feel like a lot of stuff just fell into it while I've been here, but yeah. And I think since then having the PhD, then I started thinking, I have like a work network here. I have, my boyfriend's family. If we stay here, we're at least close to his family. If we go back to the US, we're close to mine, but far from his. So it's like, there's always that kind of, trade-off. Yeah, I know the companies here. I know how work life is. Yeah, not little things. My sister just had a baby and I see what like maternity leave is there. And I'm like, why? Like, why would I want to go back to the US and have maybe 6 weeks, I think, unpaid or something? Like there's so many like little things where I'm like people ask me like, oh, you don't want to come back? I'm like, is that a real question? Because I can give you like 6 answers. No, this is why. Yeah. That have nothing to do with having a boyfriend here, like just the stuff. Like I think I have a way out sounds like too extreme, but like I have another option and I'm already here and I'm like building a life here. And there's things that I just think are done better here. Yeah.
So you're in this PhD program now. So maybe you can explain a bit about how that works, how this PhD works and what the structure of it is.
So in Germany, they have like Doctor of Engineering. And it's like a different degree officially than a doctorate in biology or chemistry or like other kind of natural science. And I think that's one of the big differences in the US, at least there's PhD, but there's like other MD kind of things. But here, like the engineering is very often split into another kind of training. And so our program, it's a full-time job. And that was the one thing I had only known this from the US. And I knew PhD students struggling eating ramen every night for, a 50% salary. And struggling and worrying if I'm going to get, if they're going to get the funding next year and things like that. So here it was a full-time job and it's a 5-year program. I think most of the engineering programs are also like this. And so I think the way we do it is called like a generational program. So basically, instead of getting hired and having your PhD project start, you do work on it for 3 years and leave. You write your dissertation and leave. People before us have been writing new project proposals, getting new projects for us. We start working on that. We get settled in, get to find out maybe what do we have interest in. And then we can write our own project proposals. And then after 2 years, start working on the actual PhD project. And after then, 5 years total, finish the dissertation. And during that whole time, we're working to get other new PhD students.
Wow.
So instead of being more focused on like our own, like one specific topic that we write our dissertation about, it's a little wider, I would say. So we have like a wider breadth of knowledge and competence, hopefully at the end. But then we're also focused in this one direction in our dissertation. So it's kind of, I think they call it like a T structure or something like that.
Okay.
And it's a lot more project management, which, in reality is more useful for a lot of engineering jobs. We'll be having to manage 3-4 different projects at one time. And that's what we're doing now. We're not in a lab every day. Like I'm not wearing a lab coat. I'm not wearing, not because it's not safe, but I'm just not the person usually standing at the machine doing all the trials. That's why we have student workers and students who write their bachelor's thesis or master's thesis, and we manage them like we would hopefully later manage employees who work in our R&D department somewhere. So it's a lot more project management. It's a lot of the management stuff with the technical background.
Yeah, which is amazing because it must be super challenging. It's a very wide ranging thing that you're focused on. You're not just burrowing your head in one thing, and you're learning skills that are actually useful later on. So I don't know too much about PhD programs elsewhere because I've not had too much contact with them. But that sounds very robust. What you have? Yeah,
I can only compare it with the US one, and as far as I know, they have. I mean, if you think of PhD students, it's they're experts in their one topic.
Right.
They also have students, but we have so much more management, and it's very application based. So we have a lot of direct company contacts. Like I was home recently, like in the US, and I said to someone in my family, like, when I have to call a company, I speak in English. And he's like, you talk to companies? I was like, yeah. So basically all of the projects we have are with direct, either German companies or also international companies. And it's not just, let me mix these two chemicals together and see what happens with the outlook that maybe in 20 years, this will be something. It's much more, get this on an industrial scale. Is this really cost, that like the cost weighs out with the benefits, these kinds of things. It's really more industrial based. And I think that also gives, for me, it was always important that I have like a relevance to what I do, that I can tangibly see, okay, maybe in 2 years, this will be something rather than super, super far in the future. And I think that's why, I was drawn to it. I think that's really cool. And we have a lot of freedom in what we do. So we can decide in which direction we want to go, like obviously within some sort of framework, but we can decide with which companies we work with and what is it that we really want to do.
Yeah, it sounds so cool. So that's all adding up to making you quite satisfied and happy where you are. I know you're dating a German, but what is your attitude towards Germans in general? We spoke a bit earlier about how they're maybe not as helpful and also difficult to meet, but what's your general attitude towards Germans?
I think generally good. Yeah. They take way too long to say goodbye. It's like they stand up, then they talk a little more. I don't know. Like even, or on the phone too. That's the other thing on the phone. So I sit in an office with like 4 other people, and on the phone, like, cheers, bye, okay, cheers, ciao. Say like 5-6 words. And I'm like, okay, bye. And then I hang up. Yeah, that's not like a profound insight about Germans, but it's true. They can't commit.
Yeah. It's so funny that you said I had a similar experience with a German on the weekend where I had a German over with me. We were watching some football together, and he decided to leave, and he made sort of the movements and motions as if he was leaving. So I stood up, but he continued sitting down, and I'm like, okay, guess we're not. And it took like another 5 minutes before he left. So he started the process of leaving, but it was a longer process than just standing up and saying, all right, well, I'm out. Yeah.
It's even with good friends. It's not just like, we're strangers and we don't know each other yet. It's like with people I've been friends with for 5 years, we'll be at their house, and like, I'll be like to my boyfriend, like, can we start going? And he's like, yeah. And then we started. I'm like, I wanted to leave already. I don't know where that stems from, but that's something that, I don't know. This like saying goodbye takes way too long. But in general, I think good. I'm trying to think like, I mean, it bothers me how distant people are like in the bus when it's just so silent. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
so weird. But like I have like good friends now from this club, from work also. So my office, we do a lot of stuff together. That's actually something that I think that's different in a university setting, maybe. We do well, yeah. Also, one of our colleagues is Turkish, so maybe she kind of forces us to do it. But we do hang out a lot as colleagues, like outside of work. Yeah, this like distancing thing, I just feel like that's so unnecessary. But I guess Germans are okay.
After all that, I guess they are. They're like I always say, there's a reason we're all here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, like the ones I know, like I don't know, I like my boyfriend's family is super friendly. The friends I have are obviously friendly, but I also think that from this international club, they're kind of wired a little bit differently because I mean, they're actively seeking out international people.
Yeah.
That's a different breed of German.
Yes, it is. It is a different species, if you will.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of the friends the German friends that I met in the beginning and that I'm still friends with now. I came to realize later on, after a few years, after getting to know other Germans and trying to make friends with them, I'm like, oh, you guys that I've been friends with since the beginning, you're a little different. They're a little more open. Yeah. They're a little more spontaneous, is I think another thing. They were open to going for a beer on a day, like, let's go now. Like, okay. And then I realized that not all Germans want to do that. So yes, there are Germans that you connect to, and the reason is that they're a little, like you said, wired differently to how many other Germans are.
Yeah. Sorry, topic to topic of spontaneity. I think in summer we got an invitation for a 30th birthday party in April.
That's the thing with their birthday parties. Their birthday parties, they always plan them so far in advance. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But no, I mean, the people I know, I think it's the kind of the people who I sought out also, but I'm satisfied with the Germans.
There we go. Germany, you've passed.
Okay.
You've passed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's very cool. And so thank you so much for coming on and chatting. It was a lot of fun hearing about your stay. And I think it's going to be quite interesting for people to hear about PhD and what it could look like in Germany. So I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.